Good morning, everyone, and welcome to what is the first outing for the Green Investment Portfolio for Scotland. Thank you for joining us all. I'm Kat Feldinger. I work for the Scottish Government and I am chiefly responsible for capital investment policy and laterally also the government shareholder in the new Scottish National Investment Bank. I'm really proud actually to be here this morning sharing the first iteration of the Green Investment Portfolio with you, showcasing two of the projects that are in it and generally exploring the commitment to impact and ESG investment in Scotland going forward. I have a great panel with me this morning to do that with. Jim has over 25 years experience in energy logistics and oil and gas, nuclear and renewables. He is currently the port director for Clydeport with responsibility for Clyde and Ardrossan port authorities, director of major logistics businesses such as Peterson and Streamline. He'll be here to tell you about the Hunterston project today. Alf is a 40-year veteran with international experience in project management in the energy and utility industries, currently MD of Agile Energy, developing projects in renewable energy space. The Thamestone Energy Park in Aberdeenshire is on track to commence construction in 2021, so I'm sure that'll be quite exciting to hear about. And we're also joined by Sindhu Krishna, Head of Sustainable Investment at the Phoenix Group. Phoenix, a FTSE 100 company, specialises in the acquisition and management of life and pension insurance businesses. The group acquired Standard Life Assurance Limited in 2018, a long-established expert in workplace pensions, personal pensions, savings and retirement solutions. Phoenix has a really strong presence in Scotland with operational headquarters in Scotland, so a great local partner to be working with. Throughout the webinar this morning, there is a Q&A function available. I would really encourage you to interact with the panel and with Minister, who I'll introduce shortly, in terms of any interest that you might have, any particular subjects that you wish to explore, and I will be picking up on those as we go. Before we get into that discussion, however, I have the pleasure first of introducing one of the driving forces behind making Scotland a fantastic place to invest and to develop projects, the Scottish Minister for Trade, Investment and Innovation, Mr. Ivan McKee.
Thank you very much, Kat. And I thought you were going to introduce somebody else there. That's a wonderful leader, and I appreciate that very much. I'm delighted to be here this morning to discuss the Scottish Government's recently launched Green Investment Portfolio and its role in supporting Scotland's commitment to become a net zero economy by 2045, 5 years earlier than the rest of the UK, but also to talk about the opportunities that challenge presents very much in the investment space. I think it's fair to say that moving towards a net zero future is not just a nice to have, it's becoming increasingly a moral imperative. And events that we see this year, from forest fires, warmer and wetter environments, are encouraging new viral strains, for example, and much else that's happening in the environment, really tell us the importance of that journey that we're all on. Next year, as you know, Scotland will host the UN Climate Change Summit, COP26, which will bring together world leaders and 30,000 international delegates to discuss ways to tackle climate change. But it's not just that, it's not just about the policy. We see COP26 very much as an opportunity to showcase Scottish technology, and we have some world-leading technology in the renewable space, but also the investment opportunities that this portfolio talks to, and we're going to cover today. So it's important that we start that conversation, and more importantly that we move towards taking action, because we can't wait any longer for agreement. I want Scotland to be leading by example. We're one of the first countries in the world to declare the climate emergency, and the First Minister did that last year. And that really shows how we're not only leading by example on the policy side, but also very much on the delivery, and this portfolio is very much part of that. So as I said, hidden inside that crisis is really an unparalleled economic opportunity, and Scotland is leading the way in that as well. Our net zero carbon emission targets are the toughest in the world, and we are globally recognised as the powerhouse of Europe for renewable energy and low carbon projects, and we have a clear net zero transition plan to provide investors with certainty. And it's very encouraging. In the old days pre-COVID, when I used to travel, my conversations I would have in many countries that we would look upon as being advanced in terms of their commitment and their focus and their technology around about renewables. We all look to Scotland as being a genuine global leader in this space, something we should be very proud of. So Scotland really has something special to offer the rest of the world, a unique mix of historical capabilities, modern skills and natural capital. as well as a focus on delivering a just transition, something that's very important, very central to our journey from fossil fuels to a renewable future. And a just transition that works for the economy, for the environment, and for the people and communities of Scotland. And we say people and communities, we mean all of the people and communities right across Scotland. But of course, all of that doesn't happen by just talking about it. It happens by us taking action. And one of the Scottish Government's key principles for economic recovery is working with industry and others to deliver that. And this project, a joint project, is exactly that, a project between government and industry. So that's how we're launching the Green Investment Portfolio, understanding we need strong projects, looking for investment and for delivery. It's why we're launching the Scottish National Investment Bank later this year, with a mission focused clearly on net zero to invest alongside the private sector. And it's why our Green New Deal looks broadly and widely at the skills and industries that we need in the future to support this transition. So I suppose the question really is, why, with everything that's happening in 2020, should any investment not be a green investment? And that is the lens I think that we need to look through this. The Green Investment Portfolio is the UK's first dedicated cross-sectoral green portfolio, and the first release of projects totals over £1 billion, but that's just the start. Further releases of the portfolio will follow over the coming year, closely aligned with climate change needs around transport, housing, heating and energy production and storage, and some genuine world-leading innovation amongst those projects. It's intended to cover the whole transition, from the companies and technologies that will drive change to the large-scale projects that implement them and build them into our everyday lives. And of course, it extends the portfolio itself, being released as a digital app, easy to engage with in the new world we find ourselves. I know you'll be keen to get on with speaking to each other rather than listening to me, but before I go, I'd just ask you to think about how your business, your organisation, the Scottish Government can work together to build environmentally sustainable projects of the future. Because it's an imperative, there's nowhere else for us to go, there's no option but a green future, and we need to work to deliver that together with Scotland very much at the leading edge of this. Thank you very much for your time, and happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Mr. McKee. To the audience, please do keep coming the questions coming in, and in the meantime, I'll start with one of my own in my chair's privilege. Minister, you speak quite a lot about this being a big global issue that we need to address, but the uncertainty around at the moment can make both people and governments retreat back to their safety zones. How do you see Scotland engaging with international economies and global issues over the coming decade?
Oh, wow, great question. I think you're right. There is a risk with COVID that it has. There is a bit of regression back into our shells, if you want to call it that, around the world. But I think it's at times like this where we need to be bold. We need to understand what is important in terms of engagement and connectivity with partners around the world, and to be able to strike out and take a leading position there. So Scotland is obviously a small, open, progressive country, hugely keen to engage with partners across investment, across technology, across academia, right across the world. And our biggest contribution to global issues like climate change is absolutely the centre of that. And I think one of the things that the crisis has really brought out is the close interplay between health, well-being and economic development. Something that we've talked about in Scotland in terms of a well-being economy beyond GDP, but it's really brought that to the fore. So whether it be in terms of that technology, investment, trade opportunities, I think, as I said, now's the time for us to be bold, take that world-leading position, engage with others, and work what needs to be done to move towards the green future.
Okay, great, thanks. And in terms of the commitment that the Scottish Government has recently made on working on economic recovery really closely with business, how do you want to see that play out on the investment agenda?
Yeah, as you said, that's absolutely central, because we recognise that government isn't going to do this on its own. Government doesn't have the answers, but government does have a very important role in terms of providing convening power, providing the space for others to have those discussions and take those actions. So I think it's working through that, understanding that at the end of the day, the big investment is going to come from the private sector. I think 85% of the investment we expect is going to have to come from the private sector. But government's got a hugely important role in being able to understand where there is market failure, to use a terminology, to understand what we can do to bring people together. I say that could be industry, it could be academia, it could be others. It's interesting to look at that through some of the work we have done recently, particularly on COVID. In the very early days of the COVID crisis, people remember there was a lot of concern about PPE supply. And one of the things we did, convening across industry and agency group, was to understand what we could do to get Scottish businesses manufacturing PPE quickly. So we brought everybody together, including the procurement side of the NHS, Scottish Enterprise working with businesses, NMIS to work on the innovation side. We worked with businesses that wanted to step into PPE manufacture, supported them with strategic investments, supported them with skills and recruitment, supported them in terms of ironing out supply chain issues, and really used the power of government to help tackle the problems that they had. And very, very quickly we put together a supply chain that now means that more than 50% of Scotland's PPE is manufactured here in Scotland, with an aspiration to take that up to 80%. So it shows what can be done in short order by working together, government and business and others, to deliver on common goals.
Okay, so we've got some lovely related questions trickling in on the Q&A. So off the back of that, how do you support SMEs with an innovation project where that project is pre-revenue?
Okay, yeah, I mean, one of the things we recognise is that if Scotland's going to build, and we are building and successfully building a high technology, high productivity, high innovation economy, that pipeline of businesses that are pre-revenue is hugely important. If you look at the work of Mark Logan on the report on the tech sector, it really talks to the importance of that funnel and that pipeline, but it applies across so many other sectors as well, and be it life science sector and many others. Renewable energy absolutely is a very clear example of that. So we're very conscious of that. We're very conscious of the disruption that COVID has potentially played into that space, with investors being a bit more reluctant perhaps to engage in projects they might otherwise have done with pre-revenue businesses. So we've been working with through the support we've put into our early stage growth schemes to help target businesses that are in that space, pre-revenue, but have potentially got some challenges from the COVID environment, where investors, as I said, are a bit less willing to step forward. So we hope to kind of help to smooth that, support and give confidence to the private investment community that government is in that space, to maintain that pipeline, because the early stage pre-revenue businesses of today are the unicorns of 5 or 10 years down the road, and that's what we want to build more of in Scotland.
Great. And possibly a further series of related questions we've got coming in from a couple of different places around expanding a bit more on the role of the Scottish National Investment Bank and what might be the best way to go about engaging with SNIB.
Well, yeah, as I said, SNIB is the elements of that are all being put in place. I think if you want to talk about that, I mean, everything's connected. So if you're a business that wants to understand more of that, you want to engage through the agencies you currently talk to, be that Scottish Enterprise, High, South of Scotland, Business Gateway, whoever, as your kind of first port of call is probably the best way to do that, to understand the range of what's there. As a business or as an investor, talk directly to the bank. So understanding what's there. So we're very keen to engage the Scottish Government with Kat now heading up the division that's looking after this is very focused on making sure that the focus of the bank on that delivery of net zero amongst its missions is very much engaged with business. So there's work going on to connect all that up, but please feel free to connect as you see fit with any opportunities.
Okay, great. And I think probably rounding off on these last two, again, related questions. So the first is, in light of the exit of the UK from the EU, what plans are in place to attract investment to Scotland from mainland Europe? And allied to that, a question coming in around institutional investors, particularly in the Middle East, tend to look to London as the default. So what are the 2 to 3 main reasons you would give to investors to encourage them to look at Scotland, especially if they've never done it before?
That's a great question. We're very conscious of that. I mean, I was in Middle East interest, and I was in the Emirates last year, this time last year. I met with Mazda and others to talk about investment opportunities in Scotland and raise that profile. And I had a great conversation on WebEx just last week with a whole group of Indian investors to again talk to them about the opportunities in Scotland. So I think we've got to tackle this from a whole number of directions. There's the work that I can do and others can do to engage with those investment communities directly, to make them aware of what Scotland has to offer. The portfolio that we're talking about today plays into that because it really gives us something very concrete that we can take and present to investors and make them aware of what's there. Scotland House in London we use that very much exactly by understanding that London is such a big magnet that by being in London, it's probably the best place to engage with global investors. So I think we need to turn that on its head and say that having London there and accessible to us through the work we're doing in Scotland House, and it only been an hour away, allows us to access those global investors in that arena and get them to come and have a look at Scotland. And in terms of the results of that, if we're looking at FDI in particular, and we're bringing out our FDI plan in the next couple of weeks, for the last 7 years, Scotland has been the most successful part of the UK outside of London in terms of attracting FDI. And I think we've got huge opportunities to offer in the capital investment space as well. So I think that getting that message out there is important. We need to be relentless at banging on about that, but we've got a great story to tell and we should take every opportunity to tell
it. Okay, great. Thank you very much, Minister. That just about closes off the questions. There are others around innovation in rural areas rather than cities. We will try and pick up on some of those as we go through the rest of the session. But for now, thank you very much, Minister.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that takes us on to our main panel. And I'd like to come first, Jim, to yourself on telling us a bit around how Hunterston, obviously an iconic industrial site in Scotland, is repurposing itself to drive forward the energy transition for the future. Over to you, Jim.
Well, good morning, Kat, and good morning, everyone. So everybody knows Hunterston. For those that know it and those that maybe don't know it, it's been a bulk terminal since the 1960s. First of all, bringing in iron ore, which was then shipped to Ravenscraig through a dedicated rail hub that we have on Hunterston, which was then turned into steel plate that went to the car factory in Linwood for Chrysler Roots. Some of the people will remember those days. And the demise of the Chrysler Roots factory and then Ravenscraig closing, Hunterston then turned to coal as its primary asset. So since the early 70s, it's been importing coal from all over the world. At its peak, it was bringing in probably 6 million tonnes of coal, employing a couple of hundred of highly skilled labour, and shipping out to the coal-fired power stations around Scotland. A fantastic site in its heyday. Obviously, in the early 2000s, the Scottish Government decided that we would decarbonise our energy creation, and it was decided we'd move away from coal-fired power stations. And that's the right decision. Unfortunately, in 2016, Longannet was the last of those to close its doors and it disconnected from the grid. It did it live on air, I remember it. There was 3 generations of the same family that worked in Longannet, really quite sad. For me, quite unfortunate. I was working for another company. I was doing some project work with Peel Ports at Hunterston at the time, looking to see how we could re-energise and regenerate and repurpose it into something else. This is going back to 2016. I was there the day after Longannet closed its doors. So, 6 million tonnes of coal one day, none the next. It was a pretty devastating place to be. My background is oil and gas or energy logistics, so I was looking at the natural assets there, which are absolutely fantastic. My area of expertise is decommissioning, so I was looking at that. Offshore floating renewables is another area that lends itself to the assets in Hunterston. Come full circle, I'm now the port director for Clydeport, and Hunterston is in my brief. I have to say that the guys at Peel have really done a good job in pulling together all the stakeholders, all the different academia, industry sectors to look at how we can repurpose Hunterston into something completely different. Probably 180 degrees from where it was. If you think of iron ore and coal, you can't get two dirtier and dustier commodities. And I'll come back to that in a wee second. You know, decommissioning is still important. It's still something we're looking at, as is offshore wind construction and deployment from Hunterston. But we're recently we're just in the process of launching our Hunterston Park brochure, where we're taking a completely different path, although these two commodities are still really important to me. That's the front page of it there. So the natural development choice for the blue and green economy. So you can see how it shifted from what it was to where I was taking it to where we're going now. If you just flick to the next page there, Kat, please. So I'll just leave that model on and I'll kind of talk round about it. So we've looked at the best way of utilising these fantastic assets. It's not just one asset. And to regenerate activity whilst tapping into the new evolving technologies and sectors such as the blue and green economy. To give you a bit of scope of what Hunterston's got, it has 320 acres of prime site right on the Clyde estuary. It's got a dry dock which is 250 metres by 150 metres and 13 metres deep. If you think from a decommissioning point of view, you could probably bring in 3 FPSOs and decommission them in dry land, and that is getting some interest just now, I have to say. We also have a deep water berth, which is somewhat maybe 400 metres long, an inner berth and outer berth with 28 metres of draft. It's self-scarifying, so it doesn't need any dredging or anything like that. So fantastic assets. Right at this minute, we've engaged with a couple of businesses who are coming onto the site. They're looking at creating green energy, which we're really quite excited about. That'll take up about maybe 5 to 10 acres. We have a tripartite agreement for another 20 acres, which is a scheme involving North Ayrshire Council, Scottish Enterprise, and some of the universities. And we're talking to Stirling University, UWS, and others as well. The plan for that 20 acres is to create an aquaculture centre of excellence and also to create an agri-tech hub. So we're also in discussions with data centre specialists who have identified Hunterston Park as an excellent option for the creation of the data centre hub. This would be looking at bringing in a cluster of data suppliers and serving the whole of Ayrshire all the way down to North England and across the Central Belt. So if you look at these collectively, the model here shows waste to energy, so waste coming in, being dealt with properly and creating energy, which could power a data centre. The excess heat that comes from the data centre could go to supply the aquaculture centre and a fish processing plant, which we're also looking at as well. Lots of option, a nice circular community just working there together. And a fantastic transformation of the site from the dusty coal terminal it was to something that fits right into the both blue and green economies. I would also say that we have other interest as well. We have an inquiry at the moment where we're looking at potentially building an electric vehicle battery plant. And to give you the size of the scale of that, it's probably looking at a factory of some 4 million square feet. It'll be one of the biggest manufacturing plants in Scotland. So all of that gets me really, really exciting. And you know, can I finish off by saying that if you think back to 2016, quite a sad situation, 170 skilled labour gone. If we can create all of this, or even part of this, and we've got all the right stakeholders around the table, then we could support probably anywhere up from 2,000 to 2,500 jobs. And that's something that everybody should be interested in. It's clear that the energy transition shows support for oil and gas output being maintained through to 2035. However, that additional demand that's going to be created between now and then is going to be taken up by other areas like renewables, tidal wave, wind turbines, and so on and so forth. So it's important that we're involved in that. The second part of the question is really important that we're involved in that. And it's prudent that we're aligned with this model and do our very best to be involved at the outset and try and shape the industries of the future in Scotland. if anybody wants, you know, if you're an investor, if you tap into these particular sectors, or you think that it's something you want to be involved in, please get in touch. It's really quite exciting. I was down there yesterday. It's been cleaned up. It doesn't look like a coal terminal anymore, I'm pleased to say, and hopefully we can get this up and running. I'm sure we can. I'm quite excited about it. There's a lot of activity, but we need support to make it happen, so please get in touch.
Great, thank you very much. Jim, in the interest of time, I'm going to go straight on to Alf, and I'll come back to the questions a little bit later on. So Alf, you are going to give us the overview of Sandstone Energy Park, and in particular focusing on the innovations within it that are brought forward on site.
Yes, thanks, Kat, and good morning, everyone. Let me share my screen. Excellent. So, the Sandstone Energy Park is an energy recovery facility near Inverurie. It's about 15 miles northwest of Aberdeen, for those of you who don't know where it is. It'll be a 30 megawatt power plant with potential for 70 megawatt thermal, so hot water for district heating. It uses an innovative design approach, but proven technology is key when it comes to funders. Funders are shy of innovation where technology is concerned. The first phase is the power plant, which will act as the catalyst for a number of other things, which we'll see in a moment. You see an artist's impression, architectural impression of the plant from a couple of views. We're scheduled to commence the build in summer next year, and will be commissioned around the Q4 in 2023, at which point we will be carbon neutral, and we have a target using carbon capture and utilization to be carbon negative by the end of 2026. One of the questions was about what I think the bigger vision is important. So the catalyst of the power plant, where we're producing electricity, we're producing heat for district heating via pipeline, but we're also working with another Scottish company to extend the reach of district heating using heat batteries. We have the capability to produce hydrogen, green hydrogen, for use in heavy transport. Locally, a lot of interest from local farmers in horticulture and getting discounted heat and power to grow vegetables and fruit 365 days a year. Growing warm water prawns is a very interesting one, where they need 30 degrees centigrade water, and that is exactly the sort of temperature in vast quantities that's produced by one of these plants as waste heat. And then carbon reduction via carbon capture and utilization. And we're working with a couple of people who are developing these technologies right now, including Aberdeen University. So the catalyst spawns complementary business. We create additional employment beyond the power plant catalyst, and involving the community provides cohesion and pride in what the community will see as their project. We want to encourage inward investment, and importantly, this approach is replicable across Scotland and exportable into Europe and elsewhere. The innovation that I've mentioned, we are developing a high efficiency project design and delivery target. So I won't go into the detail, but we are typically 3 to 5% more efficient than the best of plants of this nature because of our design approach. We're using the best available technology. And instead of a typical 30% efficiency in converting the fuel of these plants, we are targeting 70% plus by virtue of utilising the heat and doing so in an innovative way. The little diagram here, again, is too much detail in the time involved, but you're welcome to get these slides at a later date. So we have this innovative approach to district heating that harnesses the benefit of low carbon powered heat pumps to upgrade low temperature waste heat and deliver what we're thinking of as 6th generation, highly efficient and cost effective district heating. And that's been designed here in Scotland. We're delivering heat via community energy cooperatives. So this is the other part of the innovation. So it's innovative technically, but we're also innovative in terms of how we deliver it and the financial engineering. So we'll deliver the heat to a community energy cooperative, which has been set up. And in doing so, we provide a valuable contribution to the community above and beyond government guidelines. And in the round, what we're providing is a response to the trilemma of low carbon, low cost, and low security, and high security in delivering energy. So it was asked how important it was to work with the local community, and I think I would say that actually it's imperative to work with the local community. We've done so from the beginning, and we're trying to ensure that we have a real community involvement, providing benefit, and it's key and has been, as I say, it's been an imperative for the project from the outset. We've engaged with the community in a meaningful way via the Inverurie Community Energy Society, or ICE, and we will deliver the district heating system. The target is to gift the heat to ICE, who can then sell that heat to businesses and homes at a price which is less than natural gas, and for that model to be subsidy free. It's something we've tried to do from the outset. While there are subsidies out there, trying to do it without subsidy and without relying upon government it has always been our target. The benefits to the community are clear. That the ICE will have an ability to alleviate fuel poverty where the community deems it deserving. They will have control over community heating. The profits will go back to the community. And there is a huge psychological benefit, I think, of real ownership of the asset. And importantly, there needs to be winners on all sides. So there's a benefit to the community as well as to the project. And that mutual gain, I think, needs to be grasped with both hands. It allows the community to play an equal role with the project in helping to meet Scotland's transition to a low carbon future. And that completes my short presentation of the project.
Al, thank you so much. I've got a small flood of questions coming in from you for the audience already. So there is a group around the technology, around the fuel for the power plant, the CCU technology, and whether you have contacts in place for solar and thermal systems. So some thoughts on any of those.
Okay. The CCU is rather in an infancy. There's no proven technology other than amine capture. The problem with amine capture is it only captures the CO2. You then have to do something with it. And right now, until the Acorn project based at St. Fergus is up and running, there's nowhere to sequester the carbon dioxide. So what we're looking at is a CCUS, so carbon capture and utilization, using a number of technologies. Aberdeen University's technology is looking very interesting and uses various brines to create carbonates, and importantly, pharmaceutical grade carbonates, which have a value. So that's always what we try to look for is to create something that has a value and doesn't rely upon subsidy.
Okay, and the fuel for the power plant and interest in solar.
Yeah, so fuel for the power plant is residual waste, which currently goes to landfill. And as you may know, the Scottish Government in 2012 started a process whereby in 21 there was to be a ban on placing biodegradable material in landfill. That was extended into until 2025. But after 2025, rightly so, that material will not be allowed to go to landfill where it produces methane. Instead, it will have to come to our plant and a number of other plants like it. Jim mentioned the possibility of a plant at Hunterston that would use, I guess, much of the same material as fuel.
Okay, and coming to the final bundle of questions in that around solar.
So solar, yes, we have part of the waste reception hall is covered in solar panels, so we're installing solar panels within our plant wherever we possibly can. Yeah.
Great. Okay, and Sindhu, before I come to you for the final bit of the panel, if you like, there's quite a few questions coming through from investors in the audience around whether both projects are fully funded or whether there is scope for other people to get involved. So a brief word from each of you on that would be great.
Yeah, do you want to go first, Jim?
Yeah, sure. There is some funding in place. I mean, I mentioned earlier there's a tripartite agreement for the Centre of Excellence that we're trying to establish. But I did give a little call to arms at the end of my bit to say that, you know, we're looking for people that are willing to come and be involved in this. I'm really surprised at how closely aligned ALS projects and mines are in certain aspects. So, not fully funded. Some are partially funded, but we are actively looking for investors as well.
Yes, we've been through a round one funding, which takes us up to the start of construction. We are currently engaged with a number of potential funders for round two, which is big money, of course. But nothing is cast in stone, and we'd be very pleased to talk to anyone who has an interest in funding the project.
Great, thank you both of you. And I should say for anybody sitting in the audience who's interested in getting in touch with any of the panelists, White Label, who are facilitating this event for us, will be absolutely delighted to put you in touch. And also listening in is the team from Scottish Development International, who likewise will be very keen and who are capable of connecting you across the system, including to new organisations such as the Scottish National Investment Bank when it opens up. Great. Without further ado, because you've been waiting for a while, Sindhu, I'll come to you now. And you're going to tell us a bit about how you factor sustainability into your investment decisions and the way in which the private sector can drive forward projects aiming at net zero.
Absolutely, Kat, thank you very much. Very pleased to be on the panel and represent Phoenix. Whilst the other panelists have been talking about the projects, I'm coming in, as you just said, Kat, from an investor's perspective. So Phoenix is into the life and pensions business, and it's our responsibility to deliver to our customers so that they enjoy a secure financial future. So when we talk about future and financial security, sustainable investing, it becomes an integral component of the investment process. So we look at it from different perspectives. So we say sustainability factors, which is the environmental, social, and governance considerations. How do these factors, what are the risks from these factors for our investment portfolios, for our investment opportunities? And we're also looking at not only from a risk perspective, but in terms of the opportunity set, which is coming in as a result of sustainability. And there's an absolute intentionality here to more proactively look at sustainable investment opportunities. So we are a very large investor. We have what is called as a patient capital, where we are in for the long term. So Phoenix has invested in a lot of these projects. Last year, we funded an operating wind farm in the southwest of Scotland. We've lent to local authorities, we lent to housing associations, and we lent privately to corporations as well. So I think to what the point the minister just made about 85% coming in from the private side, I think there is the supply from Phoenix, from the peer group that we represent, in terms of investing for a greener future. And as Minister rightly said, there's no other way but the green future. So we're absolutely passionate and committed on the sustainable investment side. But one of the points that I want to make as well is the spectrum of private investors that are out there, and each one come with their own risk-taking ability and the return expectations. From our perspective, I mentioned to you that our first responsibility is for our policyholders, our customers. And we'll be looking very carefully at the projects on the financial soundness, the returns that these projects can give to our policyholders. At the same time, we are heavily regulated. We operate in a heavily regulated environment. So it's very important, for the government to act as to convene the market participants and understand the positions that each one of us will be coming in, the different expectations that each one of us will have, so that each one of us have this opportunity to connect, to go after these opportunities and contribute in this wider environment. So I think this is a great opportunity. And I know, Kat, that this is the first, as you mentioned in the opening comment, of a number of more of these discussions. And we look forward to bringing in our perspective as a private institutional investor in terms of investing and what would work for us, and having this ongoing dialogue. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Sindhu. I'm going to abuse my privileges as chair and pose you the first question. Which is around what else, apart from convening and direct support, what sort of space does government need to be in, and particularly in light of global conditions at the moment, with sort of increasing risks and the extent to whether that is pushing investors away from or towards more impact investing?
I think, firstly, Kat, I think we need to be making sure the word impact is understood. So there's loads of definitions. We operate in an environment. There's a lot of different interpretations of what impact is. So we all want to have this positive expectations. We want to make sure that positive outcome is can be measured, can be reported, etc. But at the same time, when it comes to impact, I go back again to the spectrum of players and the spectrum of opportunities. But I think the policy response is crucial, and it needs to be placed out, and it shouldn't be abrupt. So I think the current environment is only showing, we are in a live case study which showing the impact of emergency, putting on emergency brakes. So I think the more ongoing dialogue, the phasing out, be it carbon tax, the transition targets, I think the more well planned and phased they are, I think it's the best for all involved.
Great. I've managed to put myself on mute in the meantime. Apologies. That's great. I wonder if I might come back to Jim and Alf for a couple of reflections of what that sounds like in terms of the types of investment and the types of engagement that you would like to see with the investment market for your projects. Is the concept of ESG investment something that you think will help you?
Well, I'll go first, Alf. Well, I think so. I mean, some of the projects we're talking about here, particularly in Hunterston, are pretty big projects. There will be a degree of private investment coming in. We're here as well. I think the local national government are willing to chip in as well. But clearly, external investors coming into what we're doing would be absolutely welcomed. It's a fantastic opportunity, but we can't do it all ourselves. I see myself as an enabler. I'm not an expert in any of these fields, but I know that they have sustainability. They've got legs on them as well, and really we need help to make that happen. So yeah, we would welcome the type of investment that Sindhu is talking about. Yeah.
Yes, I would agree with Jim. Our project is. There's no secret, it's a 200 million-ish investment. So only the big players can participate in that. So we're talking to a range of institutional investors, banks, We have engaged with the Scottish Investment Bank as well. So a whole range of options. You have to in when we're talking about the sort of projects that Jim and I are developing. But we have a tremendous amount of interest, particularly in our first round investment. We've a tremendous amount of interest from people who are passionate about the environment and clean energy and renewables. So it's a nice mix. But once you get to big money, it becomes very people are very what's the word? It's a tough business.
And so I suppose that leads me on to two kind of linked questions. One which is coming in from the audience around the tech report from Mark Logan, which was released recently, being very focused on in particular digital and tech and in cities, and the two of you really representing what innovation and what support for innovation might look like in rural communities, and perhaps a bit on your aspirations for the level of support, either as Sindhu has highlighted in terms of convening, or actually in terms of direct intervention from some of the instruments and incentives that Scottish Government is in place to offer.
So we're actively engaging with the local and national government. We talk about technology. We're looking at data centres. I mentioned that earlier on there. And when I was speaking to the specialists, these are the guys that are experts in the field. They were telling me a horror story about the fragility of the connectivity in and out of Scotland. The fact that our internet connectivity could be disrupted completely by 4 JCB accidents in 4 different bits of the country, with 2 cables running down both sides of the country. So having a data centre that comes in live into Scotland and then hubs out to the various areas is absolutely imperative. It's quite shocking when you look at what we've got at the minute and how fragile our connectivity is. So the government and other investors are really interested in getting on board on this. Technology drives our businesses now. We've got to embrace it, and I think this is a really important part of what we're trying to do in Hunterston and in other areas as well.
Yes, the data center business is an interesting one. They're all looking for green energy to power them. Nowadays, clients of data centers are demanding it. The fragility of connection is an interesting one. In fact, the Dan Ice and Far Ice cables run within half a mile of the plant at Inverurie. And that is a data center is one of the things that we are looking at to supply with power. So, like Jim, we're engaged with quite a number of the data center developers.
Okay, and Sindhu, I have a question coming in from you, and perhaps some follow-up from those thoughts around the ROI that investors in the green sector are looking for, and the extent, I suppose, to which these multi-opportunity, quite large-scale projects are and can be made to be really attractive for the investment sector.
I think where we are now, Kat, is that there's a lot of money chasing these assets. So I think they're already attractive by the very nature. There's the sustainable characteristics which make them very interesting for investors like ourselves. And quite often there is the supply of capital makes these investments very tightly priced. So there is always a pricing tension when it comes to green assets, and we see them being priced more tighter than a conventional opportunity. So I wouldn't say that we're looking for any more return than a conventional opportunity that we would look for, but it's actually more tighter. But having said that, there's always this risk element as well which needs to go in it, where we when you look at a long term, when you look at especially when we're talking on the subject of net zero and the transition risks over the long term, you would be looking at a renewable energy which has got less transition risk than an oil company which is kind of exposed to standard risks. So the return I would say it is close. We're not looking for anything more than a normal investment that would be made. But the supply is definitely making sure that the price, creating the pricing tension.
Okay, that's great. I have a final question to pose to all of you, really, before we round off. And that is around what you believe is the most exciting green investment opportunity in Scotland at the moment.
I could say Hunterston.
You could.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I'm really quite surprised at how aligned Al's project and our projects are. You know, they're circular, they're blue and green. We're trying to do the right things. They've got sustainability and they've got legs about them. And I think if you tap into, certainly when I talk about Hunterston, you know, Scotland is a world leader in renewable energy. The floating market is really starting to take off now. I don't think there's anywhere else in Scotland, or maybe even the UK, that has the combination of assets that that we can provide for that market, and it is a growing and burgeoning market. So yeah, I think for me, all these other things enable us to get a grasp of that as well. So that's one of the most exciting ones for me, I guess.
Yeah, I think actually there are many exciting projects at the moment. We think about the Star Energy project in Glasgow, where they are developing a district heating system based on heat pumps sucking heat out of the River Clyde. Seems a bit of an oxymoron, but that's in fact what they're doing. And we're looking to do something similar. And there are a number of other projects. There's the Miller Hill Waste to Energy project in Edinburgh, looking to deliver waste heat from that plant into a new local housing development. So there's Sunamp, who I mentioned briefly, are a company based just south of Edinburgh, who have developed and have commercially proven units out in the community now, which are heat batteries, and they're very exciting because it allows the storage of heat at off-peak times using electricity, and helps to balance the intermittency that we're finding in the electricity grid now, because we're moving very, very quickly away from big coal-fired and gas-fired power stations to intermittent renewables. So storage in many forms is becoming hugely important to balance the grid. It's all really exciting in terms of both technology and delivery.
Sindhu, final word to you. What looks really exciting when you look at Scotland at the moment?
I think it's the whole engagement, I would say, Kat. I mean, the projects are exciting, but to have a conversation like this and to come to the table and engage with the government, I'm excited about this opportunity, and having this voice is great. But what I would just add is that we mustn't forget about the just transition, which we discussed in this webinar, because there are certain sectors, certain projects which naturally looks the right thing, that attractive from a sustainability perspective. But this is about the journey, and we shouldn't forget the social impact that it could have or will have if we don't take everybody along the journey. So I think all sectors have exciting opportunities, and it's for everybody to go along.
Thank you very much to our panel. I'm going to round us off with a couple of comments, and as I do, I'll pick up on the final few questions that are outstanding. George, you're looking for Alf's email address. We'll make sure we get that to you. We will, in the margins and after this event, send around a link to the full green investment portfolio. There are a number of people asking if they can see details of the other projects in that, so we'll make sure that you get them. And as Sindhu has said, other than that, for me, this is a really exciting opportunity to open a conversation. We've published the green investment portfolio, but we've always been clear that this is meant to be released in phases, that we will be adding more projects. We are looking at ones at the moment around battery storage, around hydrogen, around solar, around wind. So some really, really exciting things coming through. We are also working with colleagues across the Scottish Government and other policy areas to see if we can actually build some really big strategic planks out into this green investment area around, for example, EV charging or heating networks at really grand scale. So either the entire Clyde or all of Glasgow, that sort of scale of it, to see whether that that can be done and is an attractive investable proposition. So lots of work to come over the coming years on this. We are definitely at the start of a journey, and we're really, really grateful actually that you've all taken time this morning to start it with us. It remains for me simply to thank the Minister for taking part, and our panel, and indeed all of you for joining us today, and we look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.